Sometimes snow refuses to behave. It tumbles from the sky sideways or spins itself into ghostly white wheels rolling across an open field. It floats upward like it's forgotten which way gravity goes, comes with thunder, flashes with lightning, or falls in silence so deep you swear you can hear your own heartbeat echoing in it. They call it thunder snow, a storm where lightning pierces through a curtain of falling snow. It's rare, but it happens. It feels otherworldly. The flashing is muffled, the thunder softened like a storm trying to keep a secret. Meteorologists still debate why it happens so rarely. Something about warm and cold air layers stacking in just the right way, something about static building inside ice crystals instead of raindrops. But for me, it's proof that even in winter's quietest moments, there's a wildness, electricity, light, and noise just waiting for the right kind of chaos to wake it. And then there are snow rollers. If you have never seen one, imagine a field of white jelly rolls, perfect cylinders of snow, somehow hollow in the middle, as if the wind itself were baking. They form when sticky snow meets a strong, steady wind, rolling itself into a shape like nature playing with dough. In 2008, an entire meadow in Ohio and Idaho were covered in them. Thousands of perfect snow tubes as far as the eye could see. It's funny how things like that never make the headlines. We hear about hurricanes, wildfires, and floods, the destructive stories of nature, but snow rollers, upside down frost that grows from the ground up, they're gentle misbehaviors, harmless rebellions against the laws of gravity and routine. There's something charming about that because snow at its core is never ordinary. It exists only within a few degrees of possible. Change the temperature by just 1 or 2 and it's gone. Change the humidity a little and its patterns shift from stars to needles and plates. Every snowflake is an experiment in timing, in balance, in microphysics, and every once in a while, it takes that experiment and says, let's try something different. There's even a phenomenon called inverted snow. When tiny ice crystals form near the ground and drift upward into fog, it's not falling snow, it's rising snow. You won't find it on a forecast, but photographers have captured it. These little plumes of white drifting skyward like reverse rain. When I read about that, it reminded me of nights I've spent outside collecting snowflakes, nights when the air is so still, it feels like it's holding its breath. You notice strange things in that quiet, how snow doesn't really fall straight down, but it kind of wanders. It tumbles and swirls. It hesitates before landing, like it's thinking about it. And in that hesitation, in the tiny dance between sky and earth, there's wonder. The kind you can't schedule or repeat, the kind that's just happens when conditions decide to surprise you. If I ever get bored, standing in the cold for hours, catching snowflakes that melt if you breathe wrong, but it's the opposite. It's never the same. Every storm writes its own physics. Sometimes when I'm out there, I think about how small all of these wonders are, how quiet. You could be sitting by a window, lost in your own thoughts, and never know that outside the sky just rolled itself into 1,000 perfect snow wheels or whispered lightning into the dark. Snow teaches us that wonder doesn't shout, it drifts. It arrives slowly, sideways, wrong way, and if you blink, you could miss it. Some snow never leaves. It falls once and then keeps its promise to the sky for thousands of years. Far beneath our feet, in the buried layers of glaciers and ice sheets, are snowflakes that first fell before the first cities, before writing, before we even knew what winter was. The deeper they go, the older the world becomes. In Greenland and Antarctica, those pages run back hundreds of thousands of years. Inside them are air bubbles of ancient air, tiny spheres that contain the breath of mammoths, forests long gone, of lightning storms from ages that no one ever saw. What amazes me the most is that even after millennia, the geometry of a snowflake can remain visible. Its six-fold pattern still faintly traced in ice. Scientists have sliced core samples so thin you can shine light through them and see the ghosts of snowflakes. Fossil crystals preserved in perfect silence. Sometimes they find volcanic ash trapped between the layers, proof of eruptions that change the climate. Sometimes there's cosmic dust, tiny specks from space that drifted down with the snow. And sometimes the layers themselves shimmer differently, marking years when the world warmed or cooled or flooded the air with something new. Tumbling because here I am preserving snowflakes that might last a lifetime or two, and under the polar night there are snowflakes that have lasted since humans learned to make fire. The ice cores show us that snow is memory. Every snowstorm leaves behind a line in the record. Each season writes a code only time can translate. When I first learned that, I couldn't stop thinking about how it mirrors what I do in my studio. Freezing moments before they vanish, but my preserved snowflakes tell personal stories. A winter in Colorado, a night of still air, a storm that came and went. The ice cores tell the Earth's story. Together, they remind me that everything we do, every breath, every storm, every small change in air, becomes part of something larger, recorded in layers we may never see. And somewhere out there, a snowflake that fell when saber-toothed cats roamed is still resting, perfectly content inside. Most snowflakes fall, but some rise. They don't tumble from clouds or drift down from sky. They bloom from the ground, stretching upward into the cold. It's called hoarfrost. When the air above freezing soil cools faster than the ground itself, water vapor skips the liquid stage entirely and turns straight into ice. The result? Feathery towers that seem to grow toward the stars. In the right conditions, they can reach several inches high, each crystal stacked on another like ladders of glass. They look delicate, but they form with quiet determination, growing one invisible molecule at a time. In the Arctic, they've recorded frost needles up to 10 centimeters long, whole fields of tiny spires rising out of frozen earth. On sea ice, they form frost flowers, white petals that shimmer under morning light. They're fragile but rich with salt and even life. Tiny microbes and bacteria thrive inside them, making each frost flower its own small ecosystem. That stunned me when I first learned it. Even here, in the frozen stillness, life finds a way to bloom. Sometimes I imagine those microbes inside frost flowers as little time travelers, floating in frozen salt petals, waiting for a thaw to release them. Maybe in some sense I'm doing something similar, waiting for the right cold, the right stillness, something beautiful to rise again. Every snowflake I preserved began the same way, vapor turning into order, chaos into symmetry, but hoarfrost flips the story. It doesn't fall, it builds. And maybe that's a quiet reminder that not everything precious descends from above. Some wonders rise from below. It's easy to think of snow as something uniquely Earth. White, soft, familiar, but snow doesn't belong to us. In the far corners of our solar system, it falls in forms so strange they almost sound imaginary. On Mars, snowflakes aren't made of water at all. They're carbon dioxide crystals, dry ice drifting from the thin Martian air. They're tiny, sharp, and fall so slowly that a single flake might take hours to reach the ground. In 2008, NASA's Phoenix lander actually saw snow on Mars. A little laser pointed toward the sky caught faint white streaks falling through the orange atmosphere. By the time they reached the surface, they had evaporated, snow that never touched the ground. And on Venus, of all places, they found what scientists call metallic snow. Up on its mountaintops, the atmosphere is so hot and dense that certain metals, like lead sulfide, condense and fall, glittering like gray frost. So yes, snow falls even where life can exist, but the pattern, the process, is the same. Something vaporous becomes solid, chaos arranges itself into order, and laws that shape a snowflake here also shape alien crystals across the solar system. On Saturn's moon, geysers shoot plumes of ice into space, raining down again as frozen dust. Those flakes fall back into the surface in a slow motion blizzard that lasted billions of years. I love that. Even on distant worlds, nature still writes in symmetry, still draws hexagons and branches, still follows the same quiet geometry. When I preserve a snowflake, sometimes I think of those cosmic cousins, the nitrogen crystals on Pluto, the CO2 flakes on Mars, and I remember that the hydrogen in every water molecule, the very thing that makes snow possible, was forged first in the stars. Every snowflake, every frozen drop carries ancient starlight. When snow falls, the universe is remembering how to shine. We always talk about the silence of snow, but silence isn't really silent. It's full of texture. Walk through a new snowfall and listen. The world sounds softer, smaller, the air feels closer somehow. That's not imagination, it's physics. Fresh snow absorbs about 60% of the sounds around it. Every snowflake is made of tiny pockets of air, stacked trillions of them together, and you have a perfect acoustic sponge. High frequencies vanish first, the hiss of tires, the crunch of gravel, the buzz of faraway plane. What's left is low, rounded, and warm. But snow also makes sounds of its own. Scientists have placed geophones, little vibration detectors, into snowfields to listen for what they call microfractures. Each time a snowflake lands or a crystal settles, a tiny crack runs through it. The sound is too faint for us to hear, but it's there, a whisper in the decibel range of breathing. That means that even in the quietest snowfall, a symphony is playing. Trillions of snowflakes landing, crackling, adjusting, humming, the softest song the earth knows. I like to think that's why snow feels sacred. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of tiny sounds too small for us, full of structure, full of calm. When I work with preserved snowflakes, I sometimes wish I could hear them, not just see them. What frequency does wonder have? What note does a melting snowflake play when it lets go? Maybe silence is the sound of everything happening at once, and maybe that's why it feels like peace. There's a kind of wisdom in winter that we forget to look for. Ancient cultures didn't see snow as dead or empty, they saw it as medicine. In parts of Japan, there's a tradition of yukimiso, mixing snow with herbs to cool inflammation and ease fever. In the Arctic, snow was used to soothe burns, to clean wounds, to slow infection, long before antiseptics existed. Snow wasn't just a hazard, it was a healer. Even mythology seems to know that. In old Japanese stories, the spirit Yuki-onna appears in storms, not to harm, but to remind that the world can be quiet and powerful at once. The Norse goddess ruled over mountains and snow, her domain, not death, but resilience. Even among the Inuit, there are stories that snow carries away old memories when it melts, that it takes what we're ready to let go of and sends it downstream. Modern science circles back to that same truth. Cold can heal. Cryotherapy, ice baths, reduce inflammation, things we now study in labs were once simply understood by living close to the land. Sometimes when I step outside in midwinter, I feel that same kind of healing. The air clears everything, my mind, my mood, my breath. It's like the world presses pause just long enough for us to reset. Snow teaches us to slow down, to rest, to renew. And maybe that's its greatest medicine, reminding us that even stillness can change us. Every snowflake begins in space. The hydrogen inside it was born when the universe was brand new. The oxygen came later, forged in the cores of dying stars. When you hold a snowflake, you're holding the ashes of stars that burned out billions of years ago. That alone makes me pause to think that something so small, so temporary is made from something so eternal. When that hydrogen and oxygen met here on Earth, in clouds, in rivers, in breath, they found a rhythm. They learned how to crystallize. They learned how to dance between vapor and solid, between heaven and earth. Snow is starlight reorganized into beauty. And when it melts, it doesn't disappear. It begins again. Water never dies. It cycles, shifts, reappears in 1,000 forms. The same molecules that formed the first snow may still fall again today, reshaped by time. When I preserve a snowflake, I think of it as pausing the eternal cycle just for a moment. Not to trap it, but to honor it, to give form to something that usually exists only in passing. Every snowflake I've ever preserved still carries its star-born light frozen mid-journey. And maybe that's the point of all this. Art, science, curiosity, all of it. Not to keep things forever, but to notice them while they're here. We are, each of us, brief shapes in a larger storm, melting, forming, shining for a moment, and somehow leaving behind beauty.